Emily had always dreamed of a peaceful life when she married Jake Thompson, a quiet but kind-hearted rancher from the outskirts of Whiskey Ridge. The land was vast and golden, stretching across sun-beaten fields and wind-brushed hills. To an outsider, it looked like pure freedom. But to Emily, the ranch had slowly become a cage. Jake's family had owned the ranch for generations, but lately, it had fallen on hard times. Crops had failed during last summer's drought, and several cattle had gotten sick over winter. Debts were piling up, and hope seemed to be slipping further away each day. Jake worked from sunrise to sundown repairing fences, tending livestock, and negotiating with buyers who wanted everything cheap. But no matter how hard he worked, things didn't seem to change. Living with him was Martha, Jake's mother, a stern, gray-haired woman with a voice sharp enough to cut through steel. She believed in discipline, sacrifice, and silence, and she expected everyone in the house to live by her rules. In her eyes, emotions were weakness, comfort was luxury, and kindness was unnecessary. From the moment Emily moved in, Martha had made her position clear: a wife is only valuable if she works. Pregnancy, according to Martha, was no excuse for rest. "Women these days are soft," Martha would say, slamming pots in the kitchen. "Back in my time, I was milking cows while expecting Jake, didn't complain once." Emily, now 8 months pregnant, tried her best to keep up. Every morning, she forced herself out of bed before sunrise, even when her back screamed with pain and her feet swelled like stones. She hauled buckets of water, fed the chickens, and swept the long wooden porch, all while breathing through sharp cramps that kept coming and going. Jake often tried to stop her. Please," he'd say, gently taking the broom from her hands. "You need to rest. I'll handle it." But Martha would appear out of nowhere, arms crossed, lips pursed in disapproval. "Let her work," she'd snap. "A little sweat won't kill her." Jake, stuck between his wife and his mother, would hesitate, and in that moment of silence, Martha would win. One particularly hot afternoon, the sun beat down mercilessly as Emily hauled a heavy basket of laundry across the yard. Each step felt heavier than the last. She paused to catch her breath, pressing a hand against her belly as the baby kicked restlessly. From the porch, Martha watched like a hawk. "Stop standing around," she barked. "You think that baby gives you a free pass?" Emily wanted to answer back. She wanted to scream that she was doing her best, that she was exhausted, terrified, and counting down the days until she could finally hold her child. But the fear of confrontation kept her silent. Instead, she lowered her head and kept moving. Inside the house later that evening, Emily sank into a chair, wincing as another sharp cramp shot through her belly. She rubbed it gently, whispering, "Hang in there, little one. Mommy's trying." Jake walked in and saw her struggling. He knelt beside her, worry etched across his tired face. You're overworking yourself. I'm gonna talk to Ma." "No," Emily interrupted softly. "You know how she'll react." Jake clenched his fists but said nothing. He kissed her forehead, his heart heavy with helplessness. He wanted to protect her, but tradition and guilt had chained him for too long. Outside, Martha stood silently in the hallway, listening. Her expression was unreadable, but whatever sentiment lingered in her eyes vanished the moment she turned away. For in her mind, there was no weakness allowed under her roof. The next morning began like all the others, with silence. No birdsong, no laughter, no warm stove crackling in welcome. Only the sound of cold wind brushing against the dusty windows as Emily forced herself out of bed. Her belly felt heavier today. The baby had dropped lower, making every movement tight and uncomfortable. Still, she pulled on her worn boots and wrapped a shawl around her shoulders before heading to the kitchen. Martha was already there, elbows deep in dough, grinding flour with the aggression of someone punishing the earth itself. "You're late," she said without looking up. Emily glanced at the clock. It was barely 5:30 a.m. I wasn't feeling well," Emily replied, one hand instinctively resting over her belly. Martha's eyes flicked toward her, cold and sharp. "Pregnancy isn't sickness," she snapped. "Work through it. That's what real women do." Jake entered a moment later, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He immediately noticed Emily's pale face. "You okay?" he whispered. "She's fine," Martha interjected before Emily could answer. "Breakfast won't cook itself." Jake hesitated, glancing between them. Martha's glare dared him to intervene. He sighed and kissed Emily's cheek apologetically before heading out to start the morning chores. Emily took a deep breath and began slicing vegetables for stew, her hands trembling slightly. Every few minutes, she paused as a cramp surged through her lower back. Martha noticed, and frowned. "You've been moving slower lately," she said bluntly. "The baby's not an excuse to be lazy." Emily bit her lip. Lazy. The word echoed in her mind like an insult carved into stone. She wanted to shout, "I'm doing everything I can. I'm carrying your grandchild." But all that escaped her mouth was a quiet apology. After breakfast, Martha handed Emily a long list of tasks. "Laundry, chicken coop, sweep the barn, and patch the curtains in the guest room," she ordered. "And don't drag your feet." Emily stared at the list. It felt more like a punishment than chores. "Martha, I don't think I can finish all this today." Martha stepped closer, towering with dominance. "Are you refusing?" she asked, voice low and dangerous. "And no," Emily stammered. "I just—" "Good," Martha said, cutting her off. "Get to it." Outside, the wind had picked up. Dust swirled through the air as Emily carried a heavy basket of wet clothes toward the drying line. Each step made her wince, but she kept pushing forward. Halfway across the yard, she had to stop. A wave of pain wrapped around her abdomen like a tightening rope. Her breath hitched. She placed one hand against the fence to steady herself. In that moment, fear creeped in. What if the baby is coming early? What if something's wrong? Before she could gather her strength, Martha appeared behind her. "What now?" she barked. "Resting already?" Emily turned slowly, her eyes pleading. I think I need to lie down for a minute." Martha's lips curled in disgust. "You're not made of glass. I worked through labor pains when I carried Jake. Nearly had him in the stables. Didn't once complain." Emily lowered her gaze. "There's no winning with her," she thought. Without another word, she lifted the basket again, every movement sending sharp pain shooting through her back. Martha stood with arms crossed, watching like a warden ensuring obedience. But something shifted in the air, something Emily herself didn't fully understand. She wasn't just tired anymore. She was reaching her breaking point. The sun climbed higher, burning mercilessly across the ranch, turning the dry earth into scorching dust. Emily had made it halfway through the laundry when the first real contraction hit, sharp, deep, and unmistakable. She gasped and leaned against a wooden post, gripping it as if her life depended on it. Sweat gathered along her forehead. This wasn't just discomfort anymore. This was different. Stronger. Rhythmic. The baby was coming. She stood frozen for a moment, hand trembling on her belly. Not now. Not here, she thought. She needed to get inside. She needed Jake. But before she could move, she heard the creak of the porch steps. Martha was approaching again. "You still at it?" Martha's voice cut through the dry wind. "At this rate, we'll be hanging clothes till next winter." Emily swallowed hard. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes, not from sadness this time, but pain. "Martha," she managed weakly. I think the baby's coming." Martha stopped in her tracks, her expression unreadable. For a second, just 1 second, Emily thought she saw a flicker of worry. But it vanished in an instant. "Don't be dramatic," Martha scoffed. "You've probably got weeks left." "No," Emily cried, gripping her stomach. "Please, I can't." "Enough," Martha snapped. "You're looking for an excuse to stop working." With that, she descended the steps and strode toward Emily, her shadow falling over her like a storm cloud. Emily's legs trembled. Another contraction struck, this time so powerful that her knees buckled. She fell to the ground. "Please," Emily cried out, holding her belly protectively. "Stop. My baby is coming." The words tore from her throat, raw and desperate. But Martha didn't slow. "Young women today are pathetic," she muttered. "A few cramps and suddenly it's the end of the world." She reached down and snatched the laundry stick from the basket, a long wooden pole used to stir fabrics in boiling water. Emily's eyes widened in fear. Martha raised it. "You're going to get up right now or—" At that moment, a voice roared from behind. "M.A. That's enough." Martha froze. Emily turned her head, breath trembling. Jake was standing at the edge of the yard, fists clenched, eyes blazing with fury she had never seen before. He stormed toward them, boots kicking up dust. "Step away from her," he growled. Martha stiffened. "This is between me and your wife." Jake moved between them, blocking Emily with his body like a shield. "No," he said, voice shaking with rage. "This ends now." Martha narrowed her eyes. "You defy me over her?" Jake didn't hesitate. "Yes." The word cut through the air like a sword. Martha's face twisted in disbelief, as if she had been struck across the face. But Jake wasn't done. He snatched the laundry stick from her hand and threw it aside. Then he turned to Emily, dropping to his knees. He whispered, brushing the hair from her face, "I'm here. I've got you." She clung to his arm, tears streaking down her cheeks. "Jake. The baby." He nodded. "I know, sweetheart. We're going now." He lifted her into his arms, careful but swift, as another contraction racked her body. Emily buried her face in his chest, breathing hard. Behind them, Martha stood frozen, staring at the scene as if witnessing something she had never seen before. Compassion. Protection. Love. And for the first time, she had no words. "Please," Emily cried out, holding her belly protectively. "Stop. My baby is coming." The words tore from her throat, raw and desperate. But Martha didn't slow. "Young women today are pathetic," she muttered. "A few cramps and suddenly it's the end of the world." She reached down and snatched the laundry stick from the basket, a long wooden pole used to stir fabrics in boiling water. Emily's eyes widened in fear. Martha raised it. "You're going to get up right now or—" At that moment, a voice roared from behind. "M.A. That's enough." Martha froze. Emily turned her head, breath trembling. Jake was standing at the edge of the yard, fists clenched, eyes blazing with fury she had never seen before. He stormed toward them, boots kicking up dust. "Step away from her," he growled. Martha stiffened. "This is between me and your wife." Jake moved between them, blocking Emily with his body like a shield. "No," he said, voice shaking with rage. "This ends now." Martha narrowed her eyes. "You defy me over her?" Jake didn't hesitate. "Yes." The word cut through the air like a sword. Martha's face twisted in disbelief, as if she had been struck across the face. But Jake wasn't done. He snatched the laundry stick from her hand and threw it aside. Then he turned to Emily, dropping to his knees. He whispered, brushing the hair from her face, "I'm here. I've got you." She clung to his arm, tears streaking down her cheeks. "Jake. The baby." He nodded. "I know, sweetheart. We're going now." He lifted her into his arms, careful but swift, as another contraction racked her body. Emily buried her face in his chest, breathing hard. Behind them, Martha stood frozen, staring at the scene as if witnessing something she had never seen before. Compassion. Protection. Love. And for the first time, she had no words. "If you can't show compassion to the woman carrying your grandchild, then you have no right to call yourself a mother, or a grandmother." Martha stared at him, stunned. Every argument she had prepared died on her lips. Then Jake turned away, climbing back onto the wagon. He grabbed the reins and called out, "Kya." The horses lunged forward. But just as the wagon began to roll, Martha shouted, "Jake, wait." He yanked the reins, stopping. Emily held her breath. Martha stood frozen, struggling with a storm of emotions she had long buried. When she spoke, her voice trembled, something no one had heard from her in years. "Jake," she said slowly. She will need warm water. And fresh cloth." Jake stared at her. Martha swallowed hard. "You won't make it far without help." Emily's eyes widened. Was this an apology? No, not yet. But it was the beginning of one. Jake nodded stiffly but said nothing. Emily watched as Martha stepped toward the wagon, not with dominance this time, but with hesitation. She placed a hand on the side of the wagon, not quite looking at Emily. "I'll get the supplies," she murmured. Then we'll bring her inside." Jake hesitated. Emily reached for his arm gently. "Please," she whispered. "Let's stay." It wasn't trust. It was hope. Jake nodded and helped her inside. And for the first time since Emily had come to the ranch, Martha didn't stand in the doorway like a judge. She stepped aside and let them in. The house, once rigid and cold, now buzzed with urgent movement. Martha rushed into the kitchen, her hands shaking as she grabbed clean linens, boiled water, and gathered every herb and salve she had once used as a midwife decades ago. For the first time, she wasn't barking orders, she was quiet, focused, almost nervous. Jake stayed by Emily's side, helping her lie down on the bed they had prepared in the small guest room, ironically the same room Emily had been forbidden to rest in before. Emily clung to his hand, sweat beading across her forehead. "Stay with me," she whispered through gritted teeth as another contraction surged. "I'm not going anywhere," Jake assured her, brushing her hair away from her face. Moments later, Martha stepped in with the supplies. She paused at the doorway, watching them, Emily trembling with pain, Jake holding her like she was made of glass. Something in her hardened heart cracked. She took a slow breath, then approached. "Jake," she said softly, "hold her up a little." He looked at her warily, unsure of her intentions. But Martha's eyes no longer held scorn. Only resolve, and something faintly resembling guilt. Jake nodded and adjusted Emily carefully. Martha knelt beside the bed, her hands surprisingly gentle as she checked on Emily. "You're progressing fast," she murmured. "Baby's close." Emily stared at her, half expecting harshness, judgment, but Martha's voice had changed. Calmer. Softer. Almost human. Hours passed like minutes as labor intensified. Emily cried out as wave after wave of pain hit her. Jake whispered encouragements, pressing his forehead to hers. Martha guided her steadily, supporting her through each push. At last, a final cry filled the room, followed by a sound so pure it silenced everything else. A baby's cry. A strong, healthy wail. Emily sobbed with relief as Martha lifted the tiny bundle, wrapping it carefully in cloth. She stood there for a moment, staring down at the infant in her arms. Her lips trembled. She turned, slowly, and held the baby out toward Emily. "Your daughter," she whispered. Emily took the baby, tears streaming freely. Jake wrapped his arms around them both, eyes glistening with pride and love. Then, something no one expected happened. Martha sank to her knees beside the bed. Her stern, unbending posture crumbled. She whispered, voice breaking, "was cruel." Jake and Emily froze. Tears welled in Martha's eyes, the first either of them had ever seen. "I treated you like a burden," she said to Emily. "But you gave this family new life." Emily, tired but gentle-hearted, reached out her hand. Martha hesitated, then took it. "I don't deserve forgiveness," she whispered. Emily shook her head slowly. "Maybe not," she said softly. "But this little girl deserves a grandmother who tries." Martha cried openly, no longer hiding behind pride. She bowed her head beside the bed and whispered, "I will try." The house felt different after that day. no longer filled with orders and fear, but laughter, soft lullabies, warmth. Martha cooked without complaint. Jake no longer hesitated between love and duty. And Emily, finally, rested without guilt. The ranch still struggled financially. But now it had something more powerful than money. It had unity. And every morning when the sun rose over Whiskey Ridge, Emily would stand on the porch holding her daughter, Martha standing quietly beside her. Both watching the horizon. Both changed forever by one desperate plea. "Stop. My baby is coming."